like to call the City Council meeting to order. Mary Jo, can you please call the roll?
Andy Selhertz.
Here.
Kathy Pucci.
Here.
Aaron Borowski.
Here.
Kevin Tansky.
Here.
Sue Grodick.
Here.
Meg Ryan Shaki.
Here.
Stephen Coyle.
Here.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we will have opening remarks by Mayor Van Kirk. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Tansky has asked me to give the opening prayer this evening. Let's pray. Father, we are grateful for the chance that we have to gather once again as a city council and administration. We thank you for the privilege that it is to work for the residents of this city. We thank you for the privilege it is to live here in Brooklyn, Ohio, and for the privilege to be an American. Lord, I pray as we go through our agenda tonight that you will guide our steps. Lord, help us to make wise decisions. Lord, help us to do our best for the people that live in this great town. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
We do have minutes to approve tonight from the April 10th regular city council meeting. Does anybody on council have comments or questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
To approve the minutes, Andy Selhertz.
Yes.
Kathy Pucci.
Yes.
Aaron Borowski.
Yes.
Kevin Tansky.
Yes.
Sue Grodick.
Yes.
Meg Ryan Shaki.
Yes.
Stephen Coyle.
Yes.
At this time, we will have the public session. If anyone in the audience has anything to say pertaining to an item on the agenda, please step forward, state your name and address, and you will be recognized. Please remember to keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. We will now have reports of committees, commissions, and boards. We will start this evening with the school board liaison, Councilman Borowski.
Thank you, Council President. At the Jusinski Sports Medicine Institute at the UH Medical Center, located on Richmond Road in Beechwood, Ohio, there will be free sports physicals for Brooklyn student athletes on June 10th from 8 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. The exam is required by the Ohio High School Athletic Association. Space will be limited and students and families are encouraged to sign up by June 5th. More information may be found on Brooklyn.K12.OH, the school's website. Also, a big congratulations goes out to Susie Marquis, which was recently named a nominee for the 2024 Ohio Teacher of the Year program. Again, congratulations to her. And this past week was Staff and Teacher Appreciation Week, so thank you to all those who fall under that category. At the past school board meeting, topics of summer employment for departments such as summer cleaning, summer food, and summer transportation were addressed and will be continued to be addressed, as well as the approval for adult chaperones for a Greenfield Village field trip planned for May 19th. The next regular scheduled board meeting will be May 23rd, and that concludes my report.
Thank you. Next up, we have the Recreation Board, Councilman Tansky.
Thank you.
This year's Brooklyn Memorial Day Parade and Ceremony will be held on Monday, May 29th. Join us in honoring the men and women who have given their lives for our country. All are welcome. To participate in the parade, please contact Rachel at rlaskowsky@brooklyn.ohio.gov or call 216-635-4283. Parade will begin at 11 a.m. at the Brooklyn Recreation Center and will proceed east on Memphis, south on Ridge, west on Bidoff, and then north on Rodone, ending at the Brooklyn High School Stadium, with a special ceremony at noon where families will be invited to state their loved one's name. The next Recreation Board meeting for the month of May is canceled. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Next up, we have both the Board of Zoning Appeals and the Planning Commission, Councilwoman Grodick.
Planning Commission was canceled for the month of May due to lack of permit requests, and the Board of Zoning Appeals will meet on Thursday, May 18th 2023 at 6 p.m. at the new City Hall, and the address for that is 8000 Memphis Avenue. That's across the street. There is one item up for consideration, a request from Construction Resource One for a 4-foot variance to a allowable 6-foot fence for One American Road, Suite 800. Again, that meeting will be at the new City Hall, May 18th at 6 p.m. And that concludes both my reports. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, this evening, we have the Committee of the Whole report. We did have Jason Nolde from GPD come out and speak to council again. Tonight, he spoke about Resolution 2023-13, which I will go over those changes when we vote on it before voting on it this evening. We did also discuss the NOPEC sponsorship award that is under our notifications today for $2,000 for the summer concerts in the park. And this is something that we have received in the past. And finally, we did go into executive session for two different purposes, one being a negotiations update and the second being a discussion on economic development. And the Committee of the Whole always meets at 6:15 before regularly scheduled council meetings, and all are welcome to attend. We will move on this evening with reports of council. We will begin with Councilman Selchertz.
Thank you. Good evening. Just another short chapter on LED conversion. Slowly, we're getting there step by step. If this was going to be the story about the tortoise and the hare, then our tortoise got a bum leg. We got wattages a little bit adjusted for in the park, so there's going to be a little bit better lighting to take care of maybe some vandalism problems. Laurel Garden Club, along with Friends of Brooklyn Library, will be having their second of two events over at the library on May 17th. Is going to be Native Plants, Rugged Easy Care Survivors. There is space for 75 people as of this afternoon. There's about 18 seats still available. At that event, we'll be announcing, in conjunction with Keep Brooklyn Beautiful, a home decorating contest. We'll give you details at the meeting, and also at the next council meeting, we'll describe the procedure, how you can enter your home in for the landscaping and everything else that you've learned at these events and maybe on your own. Cleanup dates for Keep Brooklyn Beautiful are up on the volunteer.kab.org website. Look for Brooklyn and you should find us. They'll tell you like an area radius for miles. Pick 5 miles and you'll find a number of our events. The second annual Community Service Day will take place with about 225 high school students from Brooklyn High School. That will be on Monday, May 22nd. And on a nice note, congratulations to Kevin Paul and his son Ryan, graduating this past Saturday from Baldwin Wallace, summa cum laude from College of Arts and Sciences with a Bachelor of Arts. And also congratulations to Kevin Tansky's son Brandon, graduating also from Baldwin Wallace School of Business with a Bachelor of Arts. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Next up, we have Councilwoman Pucci.
Thank you. Good evening. Last week, I was able to finally go on my tour of City Hall, and actually I was kind of glad that my work schedule didn't work out because I really got to see things when they were almost finished. And residents are really going to be pleased. This is something that was a long time coming, and it's something that we all can be proud of. But mostly I'm excited for our police officers and correction officers. They've been working so long in a very challenging environment. And I'm so pleased that our community has been able to provide them with the space and facilities that they need. I also saw that Susie Marquis was nominated for Teacher of the Year. And we go way back from my work on the Safe Routes to School Committee. And her dedication to the students of this community is absolutely inspirational. So fingers crossed that she ends up winning. But just to be nominated is such an honor. I'd like to thank everyone who came out to the Big Creek Watershed Cleanup on April 29th. We had 34 volunteers, and a special thanks to Boy Scout Troop 319 and our firefighters who sponsor this troop. Their leaders and their parents are raising civic-minded, helpful, and polite young men. After we had pizza, they got right to work to clean up the room. They wouldn't even let me wipe off a table. And they also helped me and our cleanup site leader, Mary Ellen Stasek, carry the heavy things to our car and load them. So they're raising good young citizens. I attended the Historical Society's first in-person meeting since COVID. They had a very interesting speaker, Kevin McGee. The program was Lost in the Ice and Snow, the Tragedy of the Admiral and the Cleveco. This was a tug and a tanker barge that sunk in Lake Erie. Many thanks to the small but mighty group of dedicated volunteers at the Historical Society that keep it running. Please consider joining. It's very reasonable. I think it's like $5 a year, and preserving our history is such a worthy cause. Their next meeting is Wednesday, May 31st at 7 o'clock, and the speaker will be John Hemsath, who will present on the history of Playhouse Square. And I think that completes my report. Thank you.
Next up, we have Councilman Borowski.
Thank you, Council President. I'd like to say a big thank you to the voters that supported the zoning update on the ballot overwhelmingly this past Tuesday. I'd like to thank Council, the current and former mayor for supporting this, as well as a big thank you has to go out to Jeremy and Kevin on working together to make sure that this met all the right criterias. So again, thank you, Brooklyn. A couple months ago, I started a community recognition award to recognize businesses that exist in Brooklyn. The first one was Mama's Pierogi, which I thought was perfect one to do, especially during the Lenten season. The second was Brooklyn Kung Fu, which then went on shortly afterwards to win multiple medals at a competition. The third one recently, just this past week, I went up and I visited Zelly's Auto Services. I did not know this. They've been in the community for 50 years. Father owned it, then Frank does now. He works there with his son. Wonderful people. So I'm honored in being able to hand out this personal award. It's a simple thank you to all the businesses that choose to stay and succeed in Brooklyn. The feedback from them and the community has been positive. And to continue on something positive, in my continued speaking on the topic of the new Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu training program at our local Ohio gym located at the Bidoff Plaza, this past Thursday night, I had the pleasure of attending one of their classes and watching one of Brooklyn's own, one of our fine police officers, participate in the class. The dedication that I saw from Morley Brennenstuhl, it was intense and it was impressive. He and I spoke at length about the importance of property defense training for police officers and first responders, because they do end up in situations where things can get very testy. And he referred to it as running out the clock. The importance of the endurance needed, and I highly encourage, and he does as well, any and all officers, firefighters, residents to check out this program. Quick reminder, Memphis Kitty Park, which has also been running in this city for many decades, opens up for the summer season on May 20th. For over 70 years, this has been a hallmark of our city, a tradition for families and residents. And speaking of traditions, especially around major cities around America, is the classic ice cream truck. Last year, with the help of council, I looked to do away with the unnecessary restrictions that hindered these small businesses and their success in the city. It took quite a few phone calls from me, but finally, anyone that's seen it on social media and so forth this past weekend, I had a vendor come through that pulled a permit through the building department. And the comments I saw on social media were just absolutely touching. People speaking on the idea that they hadn't seen any kind of ice cream truck here decades, and it brought back childhood memories. I couldn't be happier with the way it went, and they've told me that they will be around a lot this summer. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Next up, Councilman Tansky.
Thank you. Brooklyn goes back to the 90s ice performance, was held at the Rec Center on April 28th and 29th. The show featured many talented ice skaters of all ages, including members of Brooklyn Blades on Ice, Learn to Skate, Brooklyn Figure Skating Club, and Padua High School. All the students did an excellent job in showcasing their individual and team skills. They were really fun to watch perform as they put a lot of hard work getting ready to put on one of these events. So congratulations to all those who participated. Great job. Thanks to everyone for coming out to support our skaters, and a special thanks to the Brooklyn Recreation Management and staff, Brooklyn Blades on ice skating directors and announcer, and the Brooklyn Figure Skating Club. The only other thing that I have is back over to Ron with the westbound off ramp. Did you, I know I talked to you during the week, did you get another response? What's happening over there now is the construction's forcing everybody to the north side of that ramp. Well, that's where the holes are. So residents getting off that ramp, which I've gotten calls, are hitting these holes, and they're getting deeper. Is there any response from ODOT on bringing a hot patch truck over to fill up these holes
I spoke with her, or actually she left me a message today, and they are supposed to patch them this week.
this week? Okay, very good.
I'll follow up with them, make sure they do.
Yeah, I know you got.
They've been pretty responsive, though, I will say. So.
Close the report.
Thank you. Next up, Councilwoman Grodick.
Thank you. I also would like to thank the voters for having their confidence in the master plan, in the zoning plan to say yes. And now I feel like that page is closed and we really can work on other parts of the master plan that have been put on hold because of the zoning. So thank you very much for that vote of confidence. And the other thing I wanted to say was last month I spoke about attending the garden program at the library and how great it was. Well, one of the things that I didn't really mention was having the opportunity to connect with some friends that I haven't seen for a while. And one of them was an old PTA friend. Our kids are both long out of school, so I haven't seen her, plus there was the pandemic. And she had mentioned that she has published a children's book. She knows I'm a teacher, and so I went home and ordered from Amazon her book. So this book, Kitty in the Snow, is by a local author. Her name is Janet Matega, and I'm so pleased to have her book. So this is an author who lives in Brooklyn with us, who has published, and you can purchase her book on Amazon. But I'd have to stop by her house and have her sign it. But it's just such a great show of the things that we have going on in Brooklyn, that our residents are just so talented, and here we are, little old Brooklyn, and we have a published author among us. So I just wanted to say congratulations and also share that. It was published in 2021, so a lot of us were buried in our houses then, but we're out now. So I'm glad to share some of the good things that are going on. And that concludes my report. I'd read it if it was winter, but it doesn't really, it's a really adorable winter story, and I can't wait to read it to my second graders next year, but not quite today.
We got time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Goyle.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you to all who came out to the zoning information session on May 1st. Jeremy did a fantastic job, as always, answering any remaining questions from residents. Thank you to everyone who voted early by mail or went out and voted last week. It was a very light turnout for our city. The few people I spoke to all said the same thing, that they were the only one inside their polling location when they voted. The good news is that the new zoning legislation has passed, and once the Board of Elections certifies the results, we will officially have our updated zoning code and map. We know it's a long process. On Wednesday, April 26th, I too was able to attend the Brooklyn Historical Society general meeting, the first one in quite a long time. It was my first time attending, and I was very grateful for the invite. I know I hadn't been there, and I told Barb I hadn't been there since third grade tour. As Councilwoman Pucci mentioned, there was a very interesting presentation about 2 Lake Erie shipwrecks. I want to give a special shout out and thank you to Barb Stepik and the rest of his Historical Society volunteers. They do such a great job sifting through, documenting, and preserving our city's history. Lastly, speaking of history, tonight's meeting will be one of the last times we will all be in this building. Please note that the Charter Review Commission is also meeting here tomorrow night. This property is full of memories, and it has served the city well and will continue to do so as the new library project comes to light. Just a reminder that there will be a ceremonial ribbon cutting ceremony at the new City Hall on Tuesday, May 23rd at noon. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. I do just have a couple things to add as well. From the last meeting, I did take Sue's advice about showing up and coming out, attending events around the Brooklyn community and greater Cleveland community as well. So as Councilman Tansky mentioned, the ice show, the Blades, Brooklyn Blades, it was a fantastic show. You could tell that the kids put a lot of effort and work into it. You could tell that the parents, family and friends who showed up were just so proud of their little ones. And speaking as someone whose mom was taxiing 3 kids around, big shout out to the parents that are, bringing them for all of the practices and the rehearsals and the show itself. So congratulations to everyone who was involved in that. We did also have, as Councilwoman Pucci mentioned, Big Creek cleanup. It was so great to see both new and returning faces at the cleanup. The Historical Society had their first meeting in several years, and it was nice to see it pretty crowded, and again, just people showing up. So if you too want to show up, you can come out. There's several events going on over the next month. Our next community cleanup is this Saturday, May 13th. We'll be meeting at 9 o'clock at the TGIF parking lot. You can come out to the next Historical Society meeting that Councilwoman Pucci mentioned, or even the next Laurel Garden Club meeting on May 17th at the Brooklyn Library. So I hope to see you guys around the community and coming out, engaging, making new friends, or seeing old ones again. I do want to also thank all of the residents who took the time to really educate themselves and take the time to go out and vote, whether it was last week on election day or early voting. It was good to see that, again projected, but that the zoning districts each did pass by such positive numbers. To the steering committee who helped with this over the long 2-year process, to, as was mentioned already, Director Rowan and Butler, and both the previous and current mayor, thank you for all of your work. I know it was no easy task, but it is definitely something that will help move Brooklyn forward for a strong future. And finally, I want to shout out to the Recreation Department for their work in keeping our baseball fields nice and clean. Brooklyn this past weekend hosted a baseball tournament for 12-year-old travel teams in the area, and I was able to stop up and watch some of the championship game yesterday. And I did hear a lot of positive comments, both about our fields, but also just our access to Brooklyn. Everyone in Brooklyn says we're 15 minutes everywhere, but it also means that everybody else is only 15 minutes from here. So it really helps put our community, I think the new signs put us on the map, and I hope to have more events like that in the future as well. That ends my report. Mayor Van Kirk.
Thank you, Council President. As was mentioned several times, I want to thank the residents, especially for overwhelmingly passing the 8 zoning amendments. This was a process that started a couple of years ago, and we incorporated the suggestions of multiple residents in redrawing the zoning map, as well as the different amendments, as well as our partnership with a private company. We've gone through many meetings and many adjustments to that to finally see it all come to fruition last Tuesday. I was very encouraged by the range it passed, anywhere from 75 to 25% down to 65 to 35%. So overwhelming support for those that took the time out of their day to go and vote. I know zoning updates are not the most exciting thing to go and vote for, but I very much appreciate the residents taking an interest in that and passing it. And especially thank you to Mr. Rowan. I know how hard he's worked on this process, and to see it come to light now is a huge win for the city. And as Mrs. Grodick mentioned, there were several parts of the master plan that were kind of contingent upon this, and so now we're able to move forward and with many of those things, and so we're looking forward to that. The City Hall offices did move into the new building on Friday. The police department will be moving over the next couple of days. Penzika is still in the building, finishing up some various parts. Primarily, they're working right now in council chambers. The ribbon cutting ceremony will be on May 23rd. I know that Mr. Cole mentioned at noon. We did have to move the time back 1 hour due to a scheduling conflict, but it'll be 11 a.m. And so we just changed that today, so we'll send a notice out to council to that tomorrow. But the ribbon cutting will be on May the 23rd at 11 a.m. And then we will have a City Center open house on Saturday, July 22nd from 9 a.m. to noon. And that is where we want all the residents of the city to come to take a tour of the building. For those 3 hours, we'll have refreshments. And as Mrs. Pucci mentioned, this is a building that the city can be very proud of. And so we want to open the doors and have everyone come and take a look at it. You're obviously welcome to come before then. That's just going to be the official open house. Will be on Saturday, July 22nd from 9 a.m. to noon. The landscaping portion of the I-40 Tiedemann quadrants is almost complete. They've been out there the last several days working. The plan is to have all those beds mulched and the grass planted and all of the plants planted by the conclusion of this week. The local street construction program is set to begin. As of right now, the schedule for that is the asphalt repairs will take place on Traymore and West 66th. That will begin sometime before Memorial Day. And then concrete repairs will begin on Archmere, Forest Edge, Elizabeth, and Brookwood. That will begin on June the 5th. And sidewalks on all of those streets will be repaired and replaced when the concrete starts on June the 5th, as well as the sidewalks on Southwood. Benke will be adding lighting to the Veterans Memorial Park Master Plan, and so that will be in addition to that. Also, there was some discussion at the last meeting in regard to some pavers that were purchased by individuals up around the what it used to be the old splash pad. As part of those park improvements, they will have to be relocated. However, once the work begins, those pavers will be removed, and the plan is to alphabetize them, then to offer the pavers to the individuals that purchase them if they so desire. If the people do not want them or they don't reach out to the city, they will be repurposed in some way in the new park design. So we will be repurposing those. Next, the firefighter candidates have completed all their paperwork. The new firefighters will be sworn in at the next council meeting on May the 22nd. The police department is moving forward with the process of hiring their additional officers. A detailed questionnaire was sent out to the candidates, and with the expected completion of that over this past weekend. The exterior home grant program, there still is time to put an application in for that. That runs through May the 19th. Eligible residents can receive up to $3,000 for exterior repairs and improvements on their home. An application can be found on the city's website at brooklynohio.gov. We've had a tremendous response. I reached out to our housing manager today. There's already been 73 applicants for that, so there's still time to get your application in. Again, that's May the 19th. As was discussed at the previous council meeting, Benke is moving forward on a master plan for a potential dog park in the city. The finishing or completing the trails in what is referred to as the Kingdom, and also a master plan for upgrading Brock Memorial Park over on Ridge Road. The indoor skylight replacement is underway. The pool is currently closed, but it is scheduled to be reopened on May the 26th. Another part of construction in the city was the turn lane from Memphis onto Tiedemann. That has been pushed back due to utilities needing to be relocated. That is now scheduled to begin in July. And again, that's largely contingent upon things out of our control, and that is when the utilities move their wires and potentially have to move the gas line as well. The relocation of the memorials out here at Memorial Plaza, that began last week. All of the memorial items have been successfully moved from that space. There's a sign out there explaining that we're relocating. Most of the memorials have been already moved over here to the new spot. They're not in their permanent location, obviously. Some of them have been stored down at the service garage until that gets underway, but that project will be working throughout the summer, should be completed here in upcoming months. The bid for the Memorial One field renovations, which is mostly a sign replacement, has been advertised. Advertisements for that will run, started last week, will run through this week, and that bid opening will be on May the 19th. So we expect to see that work taking place sometime midsummer. Council President already referred to the GMP for this evening. Just a reminder, in regards to the NOPEC, if you are choosing to opt out of NOPEC, make sure you do that very, very quickly and go to Apples to find a competitive rate. Or if you stay in NOPEC, your electric rate will be 6.45 cents per kilowatt hour through the end of this year. On April the 28th was Arbor Day, and we normally invite all the third graders from the 3 schools in Brooklyn to City Hall to have our arborists discuss trees. Unfortunately, the weather forecast called for rain that day, and so we ended up canceling the event, and then it didn't rain. But I had the privilege of visiting all 3 of the schools here in Brooklyn. I had a chance to talk to all the third graders in those schools to talk about the importance of our community. Also had the chance to give a seedling to each one of the children to take home and plant. And I've received some very nice thank you cards from the students at the Brooklyn schools. So it was a lot of fun going to those classes and to talking to them, and the teachers do an excellent job. The balance of the citywide signage that was budgeted for this year, that will be advertised for bid on May 18th and 25th, and that bid will be open on June the 2nd. And so the second phase of the citywide signage will be completed again sometime this summer. And Mr. Tansky already talked about the Memorial Day Parade, but I hope residents will choose to come out and join us for the parade and also the ceremony at the high school. And lastly, Dr. Caleres was supposed to join us this evening, but due to a scheduling conflict in his personal schedule, he had to reschedule. And so he will join us at our June 12th council meeting. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have one notification tonight. I mentioned in the Committee of the Whole report, the NOPEC sponsorship award of $2,000 for summer concerts in the park. Under old business tonight, we have ordinance 2023-10. This is on second reading. Establishing the position of a recreation coordinator. And under new business, we have resolution 2023-13. This is on first reading, but administration is looking to pass by suspension of the rules. Amending resolution 2023-12, approving of a construction budget and authorizing execution of guaranteed maximum price amendments for the city center project and declaring an emergency. The new amount is $25,171,351. This is an increase of $71,880, and this increase is due to three items. One is the addition of a PA system throughout the police department. This was not in the initial documents, but after the walkthrough, they decided it would be beneficial for the police department to have a PA system. The other two are coordination of with the generator fence, with the actual equipment. The fence needs to be moved, I believe, to fit the generator. So the amount is $2,429, which is to move the fence. And then the third item is for TVs in the day room in the jail, and they had to go to smaller TVs, and the initial TVs were unable to be returned. Items 2 and 3, they are looking to be refunded by the architect, but in order to do the work, we have to pay up front and then work on getting it reimbursed by the architect afterwards.
And this was Mayor, it's number 14.
14, I'm sorry, that was resolution 2023-14. Thank you.
Introduced by all, suspend the rules.
Second.
To suspend the rules, Andy Selhertz.
Yes.
Kathy Pucci.
Yes.
Aaron Borowski.
Yes.
Kevin Tansky.
Yes.
Sue Grodick.
Yes.
Meg Ryan Shaki.
Yes.
Stephen Coyle.
Yes.
To adopt, Andy Selhertz.
Yes.
Kathy Pucci.
Yes.
Aaron Borowski.
Yes.
Kevin Tansky.
Yes.
Sue Grodick.
Yes.
Meg Ryan Shaki.
Yes.
Stephen Coyle.
Yes.
At this time, we will have the second public session. If anyone in the audience has anything to say for the good and welfare of the city of Brooklyn, please step forward, state your name and address, and you will be recognized. Please remember to keep your comments to 5 minutes or less.
Rob Slattery, 6600 Bucyrus Drive. I'm going to be very under time today. 2 questions. Tiedemann 480, you guys you spent well over $300,000. Do you have 3 signs within a quarter mile? Is there any plans for Ridgeon 480? Any kind of beautification program there? Because it looks really bad. Secondly, I'd like to ask, is there any plans on having a moratorium like you have on the big box stores for smoke shops and dollar stores? I think we're over our limit on those. Lastly, and the smoke shop in Biddulph Plaza, I wish them well, but they had some what I considered inappropriate signs, so I sent emails to the mayor and the council. Councilman Coyle responded to me yesterday. Councilman Borowski responded and said that that's been taken care of, so I appreciate that. Thank you. Can I roll minutes over for the next meeting? Let's check.
Good evening, everyone. Victor Ardito, 7439 Outlook Avenue. I heard on watching the news on the school vouchers, because it's statewide, that they're starting to give more and more school vouchers away to anyone that wants to go to any schools. May not be 100% exact, but pretty much what I understood. And that, the state has been taking school dollars away for years now. And then also there was something I heard of issue 1, which also was going to take more tax dollars away and money away from the schools, and something about lowering taxes that was probably going to bite us in the behind down the road. The other thing with the jail TVs, I don't know the exact layout. A lot of people might be interested for 4 TVs. I mean, you've done something wrong, so yeah, we need TVs to keep people occupied, but whatever this room is, do we actually need 4 TVs where they can watch all these different shows? I've been told by someone that they have TVs in different jails and they get to watch the baking channel or something else all day to keep them occupied. 4 TVs sounds like me a little overkill. And then also regarding being a police officer and other things too nowadays, if you're breaking the law, you do things wrong, you shoot at people, you shoot at police, and you end up getting hurt or something, you started out wrong, you did wrong, you shouldn't win a lottery. Thank you.
Yes, you may.
All right, answer Mr. Fletcher's questions. So the answer to your question about Ridge and I-480 is yes. That will come in future years. Of course, part of that property is Cleveland's property. So the goal, once we have ours done, was to kind of be able to show that to Cleveland and then be able to try to partner with them to spruce up their side of Ridge and then, of course, our side of that same off-ramp as well. That will be the plan going in the future for future budgeting sessions. As far as the smoke shop, I will tell you that I reached out to Sal, who was the owner of that smoke shop, over the weekend. He was very responsive to me and to our building department today. Immediately took that stuff down, so thank you for bringing that to my attention. As far as the dollar stores and smoke shops in the city, that is addressed in the new zoning code, and it doesn't necessarily place a limit number, but it places them. They can only be so many feet apart in the city, and Mr. Roman could probably speak to a little bit better than I could to how that works if he wants to, in just a second, if he wants to address that a little bit further. That's all I have. So, but if you wanted, if I misspoke there, or you can address it a little better.
No, Mayor, I think you spoke correctly. There's geographic limits on how many can be. It's within so many feet of another use. I don't remember what they are off the top of my head, but generally that's the way they're controlled through the new zone.
And we actually talked about this. I think Mrs. Pucci actually might have brought it up when we were discussing this, but it's a pretty substantial amount of space between each of them.
It is. It's limiting.
Mm-hmm.
Question. I don't know if this can go to Mr. Butler. Can we limit how many of these smoke shops can go into a city? Or can they crowd the whole city up with them?
Madam Chair, thank you. Councilman. I've had to explain this before when we've talked about limiting a particular kind of business. My understanding of the right to use property under our national jurisprudence is that you have to, if you're going to limit a type of business under your zoning code, you have to come up with a rationale that explains that type of business, the effect of that type of business on a neighborhood. And ordinarily that comes in the form of studies that would tend to show, for example, a higher incidence of crime or nuisance activity or the like. And if you don't come up with that study, if you don't have that information to back you in making that zoning decision, you are very likely violating that particular property owner's constitutional rights. And that's how cities get sued when they make rash zoning decisions. I'm not suggesting that that would be a rash decision that anyone would make here. We have placed moratoriums in place with respect to businesses that we are concerned about. And of course, we could always make a decision as to whether or not to do that. You could make that decision. But as for creating some sort of buffer zone between smoke shops, let's say, or small box discount retail, or whatever the case may be, self-storage facilities. If you are going to permanently enshrine those kinds of buffer zones in your code, or bans, or whatever, you better have studied the issue closely, carefully, and you better have facts to back it.
So vaping, for instance, that's been all over the news, bad for your health. Cleveland Clinic came out with something like that, I don't know, a few months ago. Would that be a good enough reason if it can be well documented on what it does to your health to stop more of these places to come into Brooklyn?
Probably not, because vaping is legal, just as is the use of alcohol, just as is the use of peanut M&Ms. And yet, there's probably plenty of empirical evidence that suggests that the use of all of those things is bad for your health in some way. So, or at least the overuse of those things. So no, I don't think just a study that shows that a particular product sold is bad for your health would be enough. It would really have to turn on whether or not the use of the land to sell that product somehow creates a negative impact in a particular neighborhood. That's what you have to say.
That's where I was going next.
Yeah.
And I would just like to add about the moratoriums. Those were, the last time we had passed the two of them, it was to get us through the zoning code, which will officially be adopted. So the zoning code was, part of the study and the revisions to help monitor and make sure it's not overly excessive. And so with that, those particular issues will not be coming in front of us again. Correct, Mr. Butler?
Well, yeah, I mean, one would expect that that council would be satisfied by the regulations in place now under the new zoning code once that code becomes effective.
Mm-hmm.
But council can always decide that the threat of a new type of use of property is enough to further study an issue, place a moratorium on the books, a temporary moratorium on the books. That's always up to city council. So, and that happens over time. The use of property becomes controversial overnight based on some product, and councils often scramble by taking that kind of action, a moratorium. But it's not forever, and then you just have to go through the process of studying it and make sure you've got your facts behind you if you're going to regulate it.
Thank you.
Maybe recognized?
Yes.
Just a couple quick things to follow up. Mr. Ardito, there are several things in Columbus that they're considering that are harmful to cities. So hopefully the end result won't be as bad as how they were proposed. And I think you were here for part of Committee of the Whole. So some of us did question the 4 TVs in the jail, and we are going to be looking into that to see if there's a reason why we need 4. And Mr. Slattery, one of our moratoriums was on the small box retail, such as you mentioned. And there are studies and that had findings that when communities had a saturation of these types of retail establishments, that it was a deterrent to other desirable businesses coming in. So like Mr. Butler mentioned, hopefully our new zoning update's going to take care of that. And another example, we had a restriction on payday lending facilities. And I think that was done by population at the time, where we had one and then another one was grandfathered in, but we certainly did not want to see any more of those come in. And we had extensive discussions regarding some of these businesses as we went through the zoning code process, and I think we did what we could do within the constraints of the law. I think, many of us would have liked to see us go a little further, but I think we went as far as we could. Would you agree, Mr. Butler, with still staying within the constraints of the law?
Yeah, I mean, it would be...
Without inviting a lawsuit, maybe I should say.
Yeah, I'm confident that what we did in the zoning code wouldn't encourage a lawsuit. I think we did a good job of staying within bounds, but also regulating well. But again, I mean, products that flummox regulators like CBD products and things that sort of emerge overnight, different synthetic drugs that maybe aren't so terrible as to be outright banned, but scary enough that we're all concerned about them. Those are the kinds of things that pop up, or an overabundance of, let's say, vape shops. Those are the kinds of things that do tend to pop up, and that's when city councils just have to react. There's no doubt in my mind that despite the fact that we have this beautiful new code in place, we're going to be having to respond to stimuli going forward because they just continue to come. And we just have to be ready to respond. And fortunately, we've got a code that permits us to do that. And we've got a charter that permits us to do that, which is good. I mean, so we've got an opportunity to respond.
Thank you. And Mayor, I just had one final question regarding the sign at the smoke shop. I got Mr. Slattery's email as well, and when I went by it, the overhead portion was down, but they still had an inflatable on the side that was at the column, by the column. Do we know, is that gone too?
Sal told me they were gone.
Okay, it's gone, Andy? Okay.
Yeah, I've driven by there today. They were
And the
gone.
now open sign is allowed to stay for 1 month.
Right,
And then it'll
right.
go away, so there's nothing else out there.
Okay, thank you.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
To adjourn, Andy Selhertz.
Yes.
Kathy Pucci.
Yes.
Aaron Borowski.
Yes.
Kevin Tansky.
Yes.
Sue Grodick.
Yes.
Meg Ryan Shaki.
Yes.
Stephen Coyle.
Yes.